Okay, so very quickly, here we are. We are on a mock-up version of the dashboard, just a quick prototype. Up top it says webinars, next to it is statistics. Then there's create new project, there's browse an existing project, and there is webinar funnel editor. And we're going to focus on this today in this video. Um, so I'm just going to go through nothing here works. Everything here is just a prototype, but the buttons will link me to different areas. So for instance, if I wanted to create a new project, this is sort of what would happen. You'd enter the project name and then you would create a project. And once that project is completed, at that point, you would create you would grab a template that you liked and you would click on it and that would take you into the template editor. And you got multiple templates to choose from. You have webinar registration templates. Well, let's say themes, webinar confirmation themes, live webinar themes, webinar replay themes, and webinar close themes. So we just got different themes that we can work on. But what's most important is once you've established the page the way that you want it all set up, you would then enter the webinar funnel editor. And here is just a prototype of what I feel like the editor should look like. It seems like every developer that I speak with is having a hard time trying to figure this out. So I've tried to explain it by creating some illustration here. And let me try to explain it via this video if I can. So let's kind of shoot down here for a second. Once the pages are created, each page would have a button. Like for instance, here's the webinar registration submit button. This page does not have a button. If it does, like for instance, this button, it's not controlled via the editor itself. This button is just a hyperlink, and they can control this button via the actual button editor itself. But what does control this page via the editor is the timer on this page. This page is controlled via the closed. So when the webinar is finished, the actual host of that webinar will hit a closed button. And at that point, this page will route to wherever the editor tells it to. Okay. The button on this page is sort of the same thing. There is there's no link via this page to the editor itself. This button is hyperlinked via the button editor itself too. Okay, so that the host can route this button wherever they want via the button editor, and the webinar replay page timer can be routed via the editor as well. Okay, so let me explain to you how this works. It's really, really simple. If I'm on the registration page and I want to route the registration page once they've clicked this button, I want that page to route wherever I want it to route to. So what I would do is, let's say if I'm on the registration page and I want to route it to the thank you page, I'd simply take the thank you URL, thank you page URL, copy it, paste it here, done, and I hit the link button. So now, when I click the register free now button, after they've entered their information here, their email, hit the register free now, it will then route me directly to the thank you page. So let's say I'm on the thank you page now, and the timer is counting down. And when the timer hits 0, okay, the timer knows to route the person to whichever page, or the attendee to whichever page we've chosen. Okay, so let's say after the thank you page, we're going to take them directly to the live webinar. So I would take the live webinar URL, copy it, paste it, hit link. So when that timer expires, it automatically routes them to the live webinar page. Got me? So here's what happens now. When the live webinar page, when the person hits closed on the live webinar page, the host hits closed, We then want it to route to the live webinar closed room, or the webinar closed room. I'm sorry. So what do? We take the URL, we paste it there, we hit link. So now here's what's happening. Let's look at our funnel. When they actually hit the register free now button on the registration page, it directly routes them to the thank you page. When the timer runs out on the thank you page, it directly routes them to the live webinar page. Okay. So let's say though, all that's complete and we want to set up a second funnel. We can do the exact same thing. We can say for this funnel, registration takes us to thank you. Boom. But this time we're going to run what is called a webinar replay. Okay. So now, after the thank you page timer expires, we want to take them down to the webinar replay room because we're not live now. So we'll just copy that here. And after the webinar replay timer expires, we want to take them to the webinar closed room. That's simple. Cool. So now our funnel direction is this. From the webinar registration page to the thank you page, from the thank you page down to the webinar replay page, from the webinar replay page, we can send them to the webinar closed page. Okay. So it's that simple. That's what the editor is all about. Into your destination URL, press link, and you've linked your pages and you created your webinar funnel.